Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hi friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to speak with Jamie Arguello, CEO of Grady's Food Service and Equipment in Pueblo, Colorado. To say she's a dynamic leader is almost an understatement. Jamie was one of those hard-charging individuals that suddenly had to learn how to rely on others after a difficult cancer diagnosis in 2020. The lessons she learned and the personal insights she gained are truly inspirational. No longer does she have to come up with all the answers. Reliance on her team and tapping into their strengths is what will take Grady's to new heights in the future. I enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you do too. This episode is brought to you by HMI Performance Incentives. Many of us carry credit cards that accumulate points for purchases, or if you're like me, I have the 31 flavors of airline and hotel loyalty memberships. In today's economic environment, distributors need to invest in innovative sales and marketing strategies. Whether you're targeting a new market segment, territory, or just looking to enhance the spend with existing customers, HMI can help you design a program to fit your specific needs. You can learn more about HMI performance incentives at www.hmiaward.com or connect with them on LinkedIn at HMI Performance Incentives. Be sure to let them know you heard about them from me, Jason Bader, on the Distribution Talk podcast. All right, Jamie. Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And, for my opportunity to speak to you earlier, I think we're going to have a wonderful show here.
Absolutely.
If you wouldn't mind, could you give me a little history lesson on how you got involved with distribution and maybe a little bit about the industry that you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got involved with my family business basically by chance. Basically owed my dad some money on some real estate property I invested in 2007. And then the stock market and the mortgage, everything just went kaboom. And I really was trying to just figure out a way how I could pay him back because I didn't want to live with that over my head, even though he didn't expect that of me, but I wasn't going to let that happen. So I actually just started working for my dad in our family business. I'm third generation, so never anticipated working in the food service industry. I was actually just blessed to happen to get into it in that regard. And so I just started there. And from that point, I absolutely fell in love with it because there are so many amazing people in our industry. And it was just like nothing I had never seen, where people come together, they're willing to help each other out. Yet it's still a competitive environment, but there was just so much opportunity. And I was just super excited about it. So I actually never left. So I paid my debt off and they were never able to get rid of me after that point.
That's kind of one of the funnier stories. Some of us, go in maybe after school, we say, all right, well, we'll do a couple of years here, and then I'm going to go find what I really want to do with my life. But no, yours came in on a debt. That's actually very interesting. And if I recall correctly, what were you doing before this, before you entered the family business?
Yeah, after college, during college, I did an internship in oil and gas. So I was working in oil and gas after graduation.
Gotcha.
And then, just doing that and living in the city, I was just looking for more. I wanted more meaningful relationships, meaningful connection to my job or what I was doing for a living. And not that the place I didn't work before was not a wonderful place. I didn't have that feeling, it just didn't connect with me. And so I moved home and my brother was running a t-shirt company type thing and school uniforms. And I kind of was like, well, I'll help you with that for a while till I kind of navigate through what I want to do. And then we got into some real estate stuff and then the debt started happening. It was just one decision after that. But that's kind of how it started happening. And that led me to this path of food service and getting involved in the business.
It is interesting, kind of coming home to a family business after going out and spending a little time outside of that and seeing that, maybe the world out there isn't as awesome as it maybe looked on, from the brochures and the television. It's like, oh, big city. And then I'll say, it's just not maybe all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. And that's what I found. So it was just a search for more meaning and, trying to figure out how I could have more of an impact in my life. And I just didn't know if I would ever find that there. It just wasn't the right place for me. So, I was in my quarter life crisis. I think in your 20s, your mid-20s, like everybody talks about midlife, but I'm like, if that's anything compared to quarter life, I'm in for a haul. But it was just finding, navigating through that part of my life, trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. And when I finally got into food service, I found so much meaning in just the relationships that I was able to start to develop with people. And to me, that was phenomenal because in anything else I had ever done or worked in, it wasn't as significant as food service in the equipment and supplies industry. It didn't seem like there was as much connection. And I thought, through this, I can be of service to many people and many things, and I can somehow have an actionable impact on more than just making money or making sales or paying off debt. After I got through the mud and was just trying to survive, it seemed to kind of filter back and provide some of that.
So what role did you take on when you came back in? What was your focus?
Making money, sales.
Making money,
all it was.
Stuff. Okay, awesome.
I didn't care about anything else. I mean, I did, but it was just like, how am I going to get, X in sales so I could start moving on with my life? There was never an intention to continue to do it. It was just, where can I drive volume and where can I drive business so I can get this done really, really quick? Help my dad out in a way where he could develop some new sales channels, and then I was going to be out of there. And then I never left.
And then you never made it out. Do you find yourself still gravitating towards that side of the business?
Yes. Since then, I have actually had almost every position in our company, and I've never been good enough at any of them to keep them for long. So with that, I was blessed in the fact that I was able to see how they all connected. And while that may seem extremely simple, the accounting team and the sales team and your distribution team and your warehouse fulfillment and your construction team and your project managers, they all go hand in hand. And unless you've been involved in each and every part of that, it's sometimes hard to understand, well, how does billing have anything to do with my project management skills? But when you've had the opportunity to be in both worlds, it's where I found the drive was to connect all those people together through processes and systems and how we could all move forward and see the big picture of everything. I still drive towards sales. Yes. When I have to do accounting audits or help the accounting team with stuff like that, I'm always like, okay, this is great, but I really just want to sell stuff. That's what I really like to do.
And being honest, it's not great. And that's why we hire people that really like that kind of stuff. That's it. And I think everybody gets to have their own passion and what really drives them and what's exciting for them. One of the things that kind of, when I was starting to research for this interview and getting ready, I looked at something you put on the website. Each one of you have a nice little picture on there and tell a little bit about yourself. But you talked about being uncomfortable and being okay with being uncomfortable and stepping into the river of change. Could you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to put that on the website?
So I have actually followed a gentleman by the name of Dr. Joe Dispenza for a long, long time. At some points of my life, those low points, where I was in severe debt, trying to figure out my quarter life crisis, I found some of his work, and his work talks a lot about what is change and how do you do that. Like the hardest part about change I found is not making the same choices that you did the day before. And while that sounds really, really simple, it's not just the physical stuff you do, it's the thoughts that you think and what drives your behavior. And kind of where that quote comes from is that I was trying to create a new future for myself. I wanted to be a vision of the future. I didn't want to be who I was at the moment. I wanted to be the vision I thought of things that I could be and accomplish. So I'm like, well, I can't do that if I'm constantly living in my past and living with those same thoughts and those same emotions that have already happened in my life, constantly thinking about debt or all the problems I was having or everything that everybody ever told me was going to get in our way of ever becoming a larger dealer and those type of things. So I'm like, if I have the same thoughts and I have the same emotions that are tied to those thoughts, I'm going to think in the same way. And then those emotions are going to create action. And from those actions, that's my reality. And the only way to ever change your physical reality is to change your thinking. And so it just really got me into that pattern. And I was really stuck in the mud at that point where I couldn't see out. And I had to go inward in order to look at the patterns of my thought to say, how do I change? And when I started thinking differently and not just thinking, saying, oh, I want a new car, I'm going to get it, not that type of manifesting, but just changing how your thoughts affect your feelings and then feeling, how those emotions drive your actions. Once you can start to say, I choose to no longer do that. I choose that I'm going to think a different thought. I'm going to feel a different emotion, and you put yourself in your future reality. And then it's like a miracle. It's like everything changes. Like the way you see the world changes, the open, possibilities. For me, it was one of the most profound things I've ever discovered emotionally, mentally, and for a change catalyst at that point. Because then everything starts flowing. It's like you see things differently. It's like, wow, how did I never realize that before? Or this has been here the whole time. And, it's like, duh, that was such a possibility. But before I saw it as something negative, or I had a subconscious limitation on myself because of that. it's like it takes some work, but the moment you start to realize that, and then everything just starts to flow. And not saying I never get stuck and get back to the mud, because I get back to the mud constantly. But it's just finding that flow and being able to get in that flow state to where your vision of the future and you're not stuck in your past. That's the river of change. And I try to stay in that flow state. And to get there, you have to be extremely uncomfortable and you have to like change. I've always kind of been that way where if things aren't changing, I'm uncomfortable, because to me, that's static. I'm not moving. I'm not evolving. We're not growing. We're not expanding. And so kind of put that on our website too, is just to attract like-minded people, because, we all come with a set of energy, and I want to attract people into our, into my life and into our company that have that same type of mentality. Like, we're willing to take on new things and we're willing to drive change. We're willing to be uncomfortable, because if you can't do those things, you might as well just give up, because you're stuck in the moment that you started and you're never going to evolve past that, if you have that mindset.
One of the areas, I literally just had an interview with a gentleman who he's been in the consulting career a long time and then moved into one of his clients. But we were talking a lot about distribution is a business of change. He said, I remember one of the quotes I loved was, if you've seen one distributor, you've seen one distributor. I mean, they're so different, and the challenges are so different, and they come at you every single day, that there's something a little bit different and dynamic about that. And I think that really plays into your thoughts here about embracing change and getting into that. But one question I did have was, how did you start shifting your mentality? Was it meditation? Was it a workshop? What got you kind of on this path?
I think it was just some of those low dark points, and meditation was one of those things. I started meditating, and am I good at it every day? No. I have 3 kids and a business.
Right. I understand.
Sometimes carving out 15 minutes, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
But I think it's just constantly, every single day, making a conscious effort to monitor my thoughts, monitor my conscious thoughts. Like, what am I thinking? And I'm a passionate person, so I get hot real quick, and I've had to learn to control that. So part of that change for me was just everyday experiences saying, this is something I normally emotionally react to extremely strongly. So I'm going to pause a second, try to think a different way, and try to drive a different emotion of not what I'm triggered by, but what I want to create. I just kind of started there, as far as those thoughts would come in or something would be triggered, I would just really pay attention to those along with some meditation. But meditation isn't always the easiest for me.
Right. No, I get it. Trust me. I mean, I would love to say that I could meditate on a daily basis, but no, you're absolutely right. It just doesn't always happen. But I do find that if I can get back to it. And I think these are all disciplines that, or skills that we acquire over life, and we can always bring them back out when we need them. And maybe it isn't a daily practice, but it sounds to me like when you do get stuck in the mud, that there's a set of tools that you've developed that at least you can wallow for a little while. You can put in the mud for a little while and flail and just see what happens. And then remember, all of a sudden, you know what? I think I know how to get out of this and get going again. So, no, that's phenomenal. And I think that's one of the things that I would love to, share with listeners here is that, that there are tools that you can develop to get out of these positions, because we all do. We all get into these dark, difficult situations, and just depends on how long you want to suffer.
That's right.
It's how long do you want to go?
You just nailed it right there. It's like your suffering is totally dependent on how long you choose to let it happen to you, because if you change your mindset, you change your thinking, and you choose different thoughts, things will change. And I think 2020 was a hard year for everybody. And I think we all have to do that, as difficult as it is, especially after the experience that we've all been through. That's a significant challenge for everybody. But we're going to get stuck in 2020 emotionally and mentally if you don't choose to move on, because we'll be there forever. Because, any type of stress or any trauma that we all go through, you can choose to move forward, or you can choose to recreate your past by living in that moment over and over and over again by the thoughts that you make. And it's easier said than done. Totally agree. But it's like every day you have to consciously remind yourself, no, I'm not going to let that control me. We're going to think different. We're going to act different. We're going to create a new future because of what we're going to do right now in this moment.
2020 notwithstanding, challenging year, challenging for your industry especially. I mean, you all took a good beating in that industry, but personally, you came up against some health challenges. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So about 3 months into the whole pandemic, we had just implemented some massive overhauls in some of our technology that we use. And I was so excited to onboard that with the team and lead them through that change. And I kind of ate my words a little bit because, I do like change, and being, static makes me uncomfortable. So I got a curveball. In July, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 39, found it on my own. And at that point, it was just like, wow, it was a shock to me. And after dealing with the personal ramifications of what that meant to me personally and to my 3 daughters and my husband, then I kind of thought about work and how does this impact what we're doing here? And for me, it was like, okay, I got to let go. And that's something that was really, really hard for me to do. But it was almost like I asked for it. And I'm not saying I asked for it in a way where I deserve to get cancer because I, asked the universe or God or whatever y'all believe in to give me cancer. But after getting past the PTSD or the shock of the trauma of getting that news and starting treatment to know that, I can do this and I have a way that I can manage this and beat this, it was the thought that I had to let go and step away from my business because I couldn't do what I used to do. And for me, that was extremely hard. So it tested me in so many ways as a leader, running this company. It was basically my report card. It was like, how well did you do to set up your entire team to lead them from behind when you can't physically be there to step in? And sometimes we do it unconsciously, not knowing we're stepping in and taking control. It's just completely letting it go and letting the people that, are in your organization completely thrive. And it was so hard, especially during that storm, to not be able to watch your pack from behind and make sure that everybody was okay and that we're going to make it through it together. It was like, it was a complete test. This is everything you've worked for, all the processes that you've put in place, and you're going to be tested now to see if they'll withstand when you're not there and you don't have any control. Letting go of that was really, really hard for me. But it was, things that people here they needed a break from me. So while it was an unfortunate situation, they got a break from me, but they were able to rise and to completely find new passions within themselves. Everybody on our team dug deep, and we found so many people that could serve in so much of a higher capacity, just they might not have ever been given the opportunity, things like that. But there were some dark, dark days. There were days where it was hard, to be frank, just to actually make it to the bathroom. Not that you guys want to hear about that, but during my neoadjacent chemotherapy, I did that for about 5 months. And that was rough.
Yeah.
That was rough. And, not being able to be there with my team was rough, but they all pulled me through, and I thank them all for that. And being able to see some of the shortcomings that we had and some of the blood walls that we had and, where our boat was leaking, so to speak, with being gone, it's so much easier to see that from a distance than it is to see in the day-to-day when you're in it. So that may help me get through, because I couldn't think about the prognosis. I couldn't think about what if anything bad happens, or I couldn't think about my girls. For me, that was hard. I couldn't go there. Like, what if I'm not here in the future? I could do that with the business, but I couldn't do that with my personal life. So the business pulled me through. And so I'm very grateful to everybody that is a part of our team for helping me pull through that. Because it kept me. I kept a little notebook on things that I thought, I didn't accomplish this, or this is something that we could work on changing, that I don't think I would have ever have seen if I would have never been away from it or removed from it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and thank you for sharing that. I know these are challenging things to share and to put out there, but one of the things that I took away from that, Jamie, is that this, as you said, gave you the opportunity to test what you'd been building and to test the system. One of the things I've always kind of believed in fact, I wrote an article about this years ago. Do you own a business or a job? And it's always been that litmus test. If you can leave the business, and this is, I invented this litmus test. Okay, this wasn't something anybody else said, but if you can leave the company for 5 weeks and come back and it's still actually functioning, the walls are still there, people are still doing their thing, you own a business. But if you can't, you own a job. And I think there's a huge distinction there. And what happened during this time is you were kind of given an opportunity to see if you really own a business. And it sounds like you do.
Yeah. And thanks to our team, they were amazing. And, to see some of that work, I put a lot of work into a lot of the things along with my team members. It wasn't just me, but building these processes. And sometimes I'd be sitting there working on these at midnight and I'd be like, is this really worth it? Like, does this really matter? Is putting all this energy into this change, is it going to pay off? And so it was my test, it was, yes, it is going to pay off. And then also, here's some things that you could be different. And you know what? You're really not that important and it can be done without you. And that was such freedom for me to know that I could let go. And since I've been back at work full time, it was that freedom of knowing I could let go of that day-to-day stuff, and giving more control and building up my team even more gave me more freedom to work on things that I know will help us in the future and moving forward. But, I really see that now, like not giving up that day-to-day, you'll never get there because you're going to be stuck in the mud again. And then you got to start all over.
Wow, such an amazing lesson. I mean, it's like one of those things that, I don't know if anything else, besides a health challenge would have, or someone perhaps in your family, a challenge would have drug you away from that day to day. And I think, I'm kind of a believer that, pain precedes change, that you must go through this pain in order to truly change. And when you weren't able to physically be there, then you got to find out, okay, I can function this way, that I don't have to be there on a daily basis. The operation runs. And really, I think one of the true desires of most business owners is to find their way to work on the business versus in the business. And I know it's kind of a cliche saying, and many people flock to it, but it is very true. And it sounds to me since January that's where you are. You are now working on the business.
But I'm still addicted to that control. So I have to consciously watch those thoughts and watch what I'm doing every day and let it go, because there's still that addiction.
Yeah.
And I remember laughing at myself after, my 4th round of chemo, and things were not so easy. And I thought, I'm eating my words now. I asked for uncomfort. I asked for things to be hard because change is not easy and it's uncomfortable. And I thought, I didn't mean this hard.
Yeah. Come on. Can I go with a lesser degree? Come on now,
I'm like, my hair is falling out. I'm losing my eyebrows, my eyelashes.
Right.
I can't walk. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to learn about this?
Yeah.
I meant that for work, not personal, but you eat your words and be careful what you ask for. But I'm so grateful for it because, yes, I'm addicted, and I have to consciously every day fight going back into those old modes, I used to work on the day-to-day during the business hours, and then I would go home and do my thing with my children and get them all. And then nighttime, I would work on change and in the evenings and things like that. So I was constantly working. And so I'm like, I've still drugged back to that addiction. So I'm holding myself accountable to you, saying, I am not transformed completely. I'm not changed. I have to still fight it every day, but it is getting better.
Good. No. And again, that's the ideal state. You want to get to that point where you don't have to be in the thick of it all the time. And I think that's honestly where some of your best creativity can come through. And if you are stuck in that day to day and all you see is the fires and you're the firefighter, you're not going to get that creativity flowing. And that's really, I hate to say it, but that is the value that you bring to that organization, is that creativity. And what can we do next? That really, you're the driver of change, and being stuck in the day-to-day, not going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. So,
and the people that you've got in place, trust me, I mean, they will step up and they will rise to the challenge, and they are capable of so much more than I think they're often given credit for. They're doing it anyway. I think it's just our egos that get in the way and think that we're the ones really in charge of it sometimes, and I'm like, it's the people that you have there, and you have to give them that control and give them that sense of ownership, or you'll never get there. We still work on it every day, but that's a huge thing for us.
Speaking of the people that you have in that organization that have really stepped up and really proved something to you, shown you something that, maybe they didn't even think they had. When you had to take a step back, they really stepped in. But I also think that's kind of part of who you've been hiring and the program that you have embraced to give some people a second chance. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with the Colorado Rehire program, and basically it's people that are in that program. I like to say for things that we've all done, but they may have just gotten caught for it, something like that.
Gotcha, okay.
I mean, they need a second chance, at somebody looking at them, not for what's happened in their past, like we've talked about, but what they want to be in their future. And so I thought, if I'm using this as a mental thing, like I'm no longer going to be stuck in my past. I want to constantly focus on the future, and I'm not going to control my thoughts. To me, it was a daily reminder, having people that have been incarcerated or had some legal trouble or things of that nature, to see like they were really stuck in the mud. And to me, it was a constant reminder of how to be unstuck. And everybody deserves a second chance, because in essence, we're all imprisoned in some way, whether it's our thoughts or we're physically imprisoned. And if we are in that way, just like we constantly think about the woe was me of 2020, we're always going to be captured by that and tortured by what had happened in the past. And so my thing when we started with Colorado Rehire was, everybody deserves a second chance. And so this is something that I believe in, not just mentally and emotionally, but, practically in the real world of having people come in that may not have an opportunity elsewhere and give them an opportunity here. And I think through all of it, what I have found out the most is that they've always provided me with more motivation than anything that I could have ever given them. I mean, I gave them opportunities to have a job, but to see them appreciate and have gratitude for things that I take for granted. I don't take them for granted anymore, but, as far as being able to have freedom and the little things, have a paycheck, be able to go to have a meal with your family, just things like that, and it was a constant gift back for me to remember all of those little things, and we have some amazing people because they, are so determined not to go back to where they were. And it's not always 100%. I mean, we have people that have come in that, just like anything, it doesn't work, but they're so determined not to go back to where they were, that they practice it every single day. I'm going to think different. I'm going to be a different person. I'm going to create a new future for myself. And so it's been beneficial for our existing team members who weren't a part of that Colorado Rehire program too, to be reminded of that as well, and they were just willing to come in and do anything that they had to do just to transform themselves. And to me, that was just remarkable. And their leadership they showed us as a team through all of that was inspiring.
No, it gives me a lot of perspective on speaking back of the program. It's incredibly difficult for someone, with a felony, for example, to get rehired. I mean, I know that, throughout my career of watching hiring practices and whatnot, that, it was just without even interviewing a candidate, it was a black mark right there. It was I'm not even going to interview. I've got 6 resumes here or 6 applications here. Oh, a felon. They're out, and I think it's difficult to watch because, as you said, these folks do not want to go back to where they were. And often they are really ready to embrace whatever change you're willing to give them or whatever you're willing to feed them. They'll take on and they'll go with it. And I don't think because someone made tough choices earlier and maybe poor choices earlier, it extinguishes that creativity and extinguishes that intelligence. It just has to be redirected and challenged again.
And it also shifts the energy in your organization. And what I found in that is that they're so willing to embrace change, take on anything just because they have the opportunity, and they didn't have that opportunity before. So those people see change as opportunity. So it also helps shift the mindset of people that have been with the organization for years and years and years. They realize I've got to start seeing change as opportunity. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but that can be also felt as excitement instead of fear. And these changes are good things. And so they have been a huge blessing to our organization in that manner. And that's something I never would have dreamt that would have been as remarkable as it has been.
And I know we've talked a lot about it, but taking back, how did you all get involved originally? What got you involved with that program?
Just some local social workers came in one day and asked to talk to me about if I'd be interested in participating in the program. And at first I was like, yeah. And I'm like, here it comes back to part of the reasons why I left my previous career. If you want to call it a career, I wouldn't call it a career. It was, a job after college, but I wanted to find more meaning. And I thought, I sell pots and pans. Yeah, it's important. And yes, our customers are important.
Right.
And I love them and appreciate them dearly. And I appreciate the people in our industry. But at the end of the day, we're not saving lives. We're just not. And so to me, it was just a call like, this is an opportunity to have a more meaningful impact through this industry. I'm not going to change people's lives by, if they have a better cookie sheet or their oven cooks everything, just that type of thing, or their dishes are washed a little bit better. Yes, it makes life nice. And yes, it makes things easier. But to me, this was the vehicle where I could try to help people and have a more meaningful impact beyond the sale.
And how long have you been working with Rehire Colorado?
So about 3.5, 4 years probably now.
3.5, 4 years. Okay. All right, good. As you said, a lot of successes, a few failures, but overall still a very viable program.
Absolutely.
No, that's great. And I think honestly, when people begin to, get to know the organization and maybe come in for that first time and, start hearing about your philosophy and who you are, and again, that change philosophy, I think it probably does give them hope that you have that mentality and perhaps what you're sharing with the organization is really saying it's going to give them hope that there is a possibility beyond working minimum wage jobs for the rest of their life or just getting by or a lot of rejection, that, hey, I've found somebody who actually is willing to give me a shot at this.
And, another thing that's also helped a lot of people that aren't a part of that program that I work with is not to say that they looked at the people as part of the program as if they made mistakes, but it kind of opened the door for them to let their guard down and say, I'm not going to be perfect and I'm going to make mistakes in my job, and I'm not going to be reprimanded if I make a mistake. And that may sound really, really crazy, but I'm like, I found so many people, like, even if you just talk with them, like, hey, what's going on in your job? Like, what's not working? You know, how is this working? They get super defensive because they think you're saying they're not doing a good job. Even if you preface it with, I think you're doing phenomenal. I'm just trying to learn more, you know, about your process so I can help out. And so bringing people on that were accepted, that have, you know, if they shared their experience with what had happened to them, made other people think like, you know, I'm going to be accepted no matter what. If I make a mistake, I just got to own it and we've got to grow from it, because if we don't do that, that's when things will happen, or there's going to be repercussions for things that go on. To me, that was hugely transformational for all of us to be able just to say, here it is. This is me. This is what I did. This is what happened, rather than being so guarded about being perfect and living in the make-believe world of I do everything right. And it changed people's thinking as well to, you know, own those mistakes, look at things a different way. Like, I'm willing to accept that I could have done this differently, or I'm willing to accept I could look at things in a different way. And instead of getting upset or angry about the same thing over and over, just change the way that I think about it and just owning that. So there's so many opportunities that come from tangible or physical things and people that came in that just drove, you know, mental awareness. So we weren't so unconscious of it, that drove that change amongst all of us.
And again, going back to that, this is now giving you that freedom or that opportunity now to step back, you know, as a CEO and say, I can think strategically. I can think without having to think on a day-to-day basis. I get to think on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis. I get to start expanding in my thoughts and frankly, have a little fun, get a little, you know, crazy, get a little weird, you know, it's like, God, what am I going to try this time? You know, because now you know they can take it. That's the, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest barriers for most business owners is they do get those fun thoughts and those crazy ideas, or they go to a conference and they hear some goofball like myself spouting some, you know, weird theory and like, oh, I think I can try that, you know, and then they drink the Kool-Aid and get all excited. But a lot of them are stuck. The big barrier is, can my team handle this? Can my, you know, if I lump this out there, if I throw this on them, will it absolutely shatter them? Will they not be able to handle something that big? You've got this now, this new freedom that your team can handle this, that, you know, you can go, Jamie can go to a conference or something and say, oh, I want to try that when I get home.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think part of that too is getting them to think in the same manner as, you know, the answers don't always come from me. I'm asking you for the answers.
Right.
I'm asking you to find those answers and to drive change yourself. And so to start to see that type of turn, to me, that's the most proud moment. And it's the most rewarding is when I start to see people drive their own change within their departments or in themselves. Because if it's coming from me, you know, it's less impactful because I don't work day to day in what you do. So to see them start to drive change themselves, like that's been the most rewarding part about being back and watching them make those changes. And I absolutely am thrilled when somebody tells me, I don't think you're right. I think that we should do it this way, or I think that maybe we should try it differently because I don't agree with you. And when people tell me that in my organization, I am so happy. Like, I'm so proud because I'm so thrilled that you think on your own, that you've got your own ideas, that you don't agree with me, because I am probably not 100% right. And then, you know, we meet in the middle and come up with some new ways. But, you know, I love when I'm told that I don't agree. I know that sounds probably crazy, but I'm like, when they are willing to say that, I'm like, yes, we've broken through that barrier of them being uncomfortable. And then we're there where they have their own ideas and we're moving forward, because I'm one person. I can only do so many things. I need my team. And without my team, I can't do anything. You know, if I don't have people that are willing to put ideas in motion and to work through those things, you know, I can't get anywhere. So to hear him say that and to see that since I've come back full time in January has, to me, been the most rewarding part of everything.
It's giving up that control. I mean, and that's the thing. It doesn't sound crazy because I think, again, if you are going to have that opportunity to do something in your organization, if you're going to have the opportunity to be creative, then you have to learn to give up control. And, you know, that's really it. You know, and I hate to keep pointing back, you know, the health challenge really helped you there. It helped you see that you could give up control and these folks were going to thrive. that they were absolutely going to thrive. So now I've often believed that one of the greatest untapped assets we have in our organization is that collective creativity trapped inside of these folks that we work with. And by giving them permission to say, I don't agree with you, Jamie, I think you're wrong. By giving that permission, you're starting to tap into that. You're starting to really, release that energy. And so I can see some phenomenal things in your future for this.
Well, I can tell you though, when my daughters sing Let It Go, it means something completely different to me now than it did, 8 months ago.
Definitely. No, I can see that. So with this newfound time, maybe and a little more freedom in your daily work life and whatnot, you've decided to get involved with your trade association.
Yeah, FIDA.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to get involved with the association. I always ask this, because I do interview quite a few folks that get involved with their associations. Why did you say yes, or why did you raise your hand and say, I want to be part of this?
I'll be 100% transparent here. When we first, years back said we want to be a part of FIDA, it was just for their data feed. I mean, I'm going to be transparent and say I needed that data feed. It was like, how do you get it? You got to be a member of FIDA. And seeing Tracy's leadership, through that organization and going to some of their meetings and things like that, I was like, wow, there is so much more here than a data feed. And being able to connect with owners outside of our buying group, to me, that's been so amazing, because it's just, there's even a bigger world out there that maybe I wouldn't have been exposed to or had an opportunity to meet some of those amazing people that we get to see on those board meetings. And, it's almost like they're like celebrities. I'm like, oh my God, that's this person and this person and this person. And when I first started, I was like, I need to do what they're doing. I need to do what they're doing. If only one day I could do things like that organization is doing. But FIDA has an amazing team. And just to be a part of that, after getting over the data feed, I was like, super, super excited to become involved, because they had so much knowledge. Their educational platforms, things that they offer they're amazing. And it just to have the opportunity to put yourself in the same arena with that level of professional organization, as well as the people that are part of that organization, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like, why wouldn't you want to get involved? It's an amazing opportunity.
Jamie, I've often heard from people that they don't really know how to get involved, because they see those rock stars, they see those people that seem to be running the organization, the stalwarts at the conferences, the people who say the smart things twice a year. And yeah, anyway, that's a terribly cynical view. But those folks, though, who really, you say, oh, I want to emulate, but then they don't know how to become a part of that. And really, how do you do that? How do you become a part of versus someone on the sidelines watching?
I think you got to let go. I don't mean to keep using that word, but you have to let go of thinking that you're not on the same level as those people, because at the end of the day, we're all just people, and it may be becoming uncomfortable again. I'm extroverted, but I am also introverted. So when I first started, even when I would go to, NAFM or NRA, I would see these people and I'd be like, oh my God, like I should go talk to them and ask them a question. And I was so uncomfortable to do so, but I would just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm doing it, regardless. I'm going to put myself out there. If I look like a total idiot, so be it. And I'm totally willing just to be uncomfortable and just go for it. And I think it's not easy for anybody. And anybody that says it's easy, if they've ever been in that position, they're lying to you, because at some point we're all uncomfortable, approaching other people and things like that. But I think just come up with a question that you want to ask, and ask a person that maybe has been down a path that you're now currently going down in. And that's why I love our industries, because people, even though they are your competitors, they're so willing to share and they're so willing to help people along. And same with the suppliers. I mean, they're phenomenal. A level of support in our industry is like, if you just put yourself out there and if you're just uncomfortable for a minute, you'll start to find yourself given opportunities to be put in new positions that will catapult you into what you're looking for or where you need to go in your organization. But you can't do it from the sidelines. You got to raise your hand. You got to show up. You've got to put your energy into it. Put away your phone and just be there in the moment and go up to somebody. Like if you see me, I mean, people are like, like if they would ever say they'd be afraid to ask me a question or approach me on how they could get involved, I would be like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? I'm like, that's ridiculous. But thinking that way, like, people that you would like to approach, they would think you're ridiculous by saying, I would never, if you were uncomfortable approaching them. And I think you'll find, maybe a few people might not be open to it, but I think you'll find that most people are. And we have amazing leaders in our industry, supplier side, dealers, organizations. There's so much potential there, but sitting on the sidelines, you're not going to get there. You got to step into the river. You got to go for it. You got to be uncomfortable and you got to put yourself out there, as hard as it is.
And it's so amazing, Jamie, thinking about that. And I think this is one of the things I love about privately held distribution and these organizations around that is that the people maybe who have been around the block a little bit and maybe they've accepted leadership positions in the organization for a period of time, that they are so willing for the vast majority of the time, but they're so willing to embrace those who will come up and ask them a question or do something. I mean, I think that's really been, such a pleasure. And, honestly, in this podcast experiment that I've done now for a couple of years, is asking you all questions and you being so free with, your honesty and wanting to share, with these listeners that it reminds me how great it is at these conferences. And when we can go face to face, that you're right. They're just people. They just want to help. There's a desire to help the next person, whether they're going to be a competitor or not, really doesn't enter into the realm. At least it was for me, that if somebody came and asked me a question, I almost took it as, that's an honor, as a privilege that they're willing to ask me a question. So, yeah.
It just reminds me of a quick story. It's the first NRA that I had ever gone to. And I went with my brother, who also works in our organization. And I remember that night there was one of our reps in our local area who we didn't know too well. We're just, new, we're getting into the industry. And there was the gala that night. And Luke, my brother, and I were like, well, it's a party that, we want to be at because that's where we need to be, And I was so uncomfortable thinking, like, how are we ever going to get invited to this party? Like, I had no clue. Like, how does that even happen? We're so far removed from, that being a reality. So I was like, my brother, who's a little bit more brave than I am at times, he just happened to ask that rep who was up for the Young Lion Award that year. It was Chris Folds. And he just said, hey, Chris, how do we get into that party? And he was like, oh, I'll get you tickets. Here's 2 tickets. And it was like, we didn't even have I had no dress. He didn't have a suit and tie, but we were in. So we were going to make it work,
right.
And just in that moment, it was like being in high school, sneaking into a party. Not that I did that. But it was, at that moment, we didn't feel like we belonged, but we just, fake it till you make it. And it was, it was hard to ask that question. Like, how do we get in there? But I think there's always a room you want to be in. So just invite yourself, because that's the only thing between you and getting in there is just your hesitation on thinking that you don't belong in that room. It's like, yeah, you do. Just ask, go. Just put yourself in that position.
That's right. Just show up. As painful as it can be, just show up.
And there's always a bar, so you could have a drink if you're that nervous.
Right.
Just don't get too,
Right. Well, Jamie, it's been such a pleasure, speaking with you, and thank you so much for sharing and being so open about everything in your life in this last year, and really the philosophy that honestly we can all identify with, that this desire for change. So thank you so much. This has been a terrific conversation.
Thank you, Jason. It's been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.